Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel and happy 2023! As I've done the past few years, I wanted to make a video talking about every book I read in 2022. And these videos never really do that well, but honestly, one of the things that I'm trying to do in 2023 is make more content that I enjoy and that I am passionate about rather than worrying about views and so on and so forth. So I'm really excited to share this with you all today and I hope that you enjoy some of my book recommendations. This year I read 13 books and I'm very proud of myself for that because I actually got a little bit behind. I read this book as my Halloween book and it's really big. It's like 411 pages, which I know is not huge for some of you avid readers, but it was big for me and I had planned to finish it in Halloween and I literally just finished it last night, which is why this video is a little bit late. So I'm really excited to talk about these and yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into it. Can we also pretend that my hair is not wet and that I don't have this giant pimple on my chin? Okay, thanks. So I wrote down all the books I read this year because I didn't want to forget any, and spoiler alert, and no surprise probably, most of them are murder mysteries, which it is what it is. I just love those suckers so much. So something that I got into in 2021 that I talked about in last year's video was this book series called the Amory Ames Mysteries, and I fell in love with them. I bought the first book at Goodwill, which is kind of funny. I feel like I find a lot of the books that I end up loving at Goodwill, and then I was obsessed with it, so I ended up purchasing all the other books in the series and fell in love with them. I read a few last year, and then this year I finished off the series. So the first book I read was The Essence of Malice. This iPad that I have is so old, by the way, so it takes a second to load. So The Essence of Malice. So this book took place in Paris, and it was about a family of perfumers. And I was, what's interesting is I was listening to a podcast called What We Said, one of my favorite podcasts, yesterday. And one of the things they talked about was even if you're reading nonfiction books, even if you're reading fiction books, you still can learn so much. And honestly, this was a perfect example of that because I had no idea how much work goes into perfumes until I read this book, but it was really interesting to read about and I really enjoyed it. This one had a twist ending and was very heartfelt and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. The Amory Ames Mysteries take place in the 30s and they are between Amory and her husband Milo, and they are just the cutest couple and I just love them so much. Amory is like everything I aspire to be. She is so fun and so sassy and so heartfelt, and I just love these books so much. After that, I read An Act of Villainy. This is another Amory Ames mystery. By the way, iPads, I've talked about it in the past couple of years because I'm trying to be minimalist and get rid of some of my books and I just don't want to have so much clutter everywhere. So I've been getting my books on my iPad now because it's just way easier to have them all together and not have to be searching through books and have a ton of books that I have to carry with me every time I move, etc. But this iPad is very old and it takes forever to load. So definitely as soon as this one dies, I'm probably gonna get a Kindle because this one also is so old that it doesn't have the blue light blocking, which is one of my favorite features, is that I can read this at night after Blake goes to sleep without having to keep the light on. So the blue light blocking would be amazing for sure. Anyway, the next book I read was An Act of Villainy, also from the Amory Ames Mysteries, and I'm trying to remember, okay, I'm just reviewing my synopsis so I can remember which mystery this was. This I think was my favorite murder mystery so far from Amory Ames. It took place in a theater and all the actors were suspects, which was so good. The ending was this huge twist and thoroughly enjoyed this one. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Then for some reason I took a break from Amory Ames. Oh, you know why? It's because I was reading the new Hannah Swenson mystery that just came out, which was Caramel Pecan Roll Murder. So if you guys haven't seen any of my other Every Book I Read videos, I fell in love with Joanne Fluke's Hannah Swenson series back in 2018. I found the first one I read was Cream Puff Murder at Goodwill. I fell in love with the characters, I fell in love with the mysteries, and that was book 7 or 8, I think. I could be wrong on that number, but basically in the middle. So then I finished reading all of the rest list. And now every year I read when the new ones come out. But something else I've been doing is going back and rereading the books that I didn't read yet. But this was a new book from last year, Caramel Pecan Roll Murder. I've talked about my struggles with the Hannah Swensen series recently in previous videos, but they are definitely, it's really hard because I don't want to criticize the author, but I really think it has to do with the editing team. There's a lot of inconsistencies in the books lately. They're just not as juicy as they used to be. I feel like there's a lot of like filler content, but this one I did enjoy. This one I was like craving a little more love story. There's like a love triangle going on in the Hannah Swensen books. There was really none of that in this book, and there was a twist at the end, but I kind of saw it coming. I'm part of a Joanne Fluke fan page on Facebook, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, the ending, and I was like, how did you not see that coming? So I don't know. It was good. It wasn't my favorite Hannah Swensen mystery, and I'm excited for the next one to come out this year. Okay, so after I read that Hannah Swensen one, the new one, I went back to the Amory Ames because I just wanted to finish them all off. So the next Amory Ames mystery I read was A Dangerous Engagement. This one was also another really, really awesome mystery. I loved it so much. It takes place in New York in the Prohibition era, and it was really interesting to read about that and kind of see like the underground like speakeasies and the alcohol businesses that were happening at the time. And it was just a really great mystery and kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time. I didn't figure out who the killer was, but there is another mystery in this book. I'm not gonna say what it is, I don't want to spoil it, and I figured that out pretty early on in the book and it was so good. And then lastly, the last Amory Ames mystery is A Deception at Thorncrest, and this one took place in Amory and Milo's country home, and it took place during a festival. It was really exciting. I really enjoyed this one, and the murderer was very, very surprising, and the ending made me cry happy tears. I really hope this isn't the end for Amory Ames because I love these books so much, but I haven't seen anything announced on the author's Instagram page, so fingers crossed we'll get more Amory in the future. But these books have my heart. I love them so much. So like I said, I went back and started reading the Hannah Swensen mysteries from the beginning last year, the year before I think. So I've read a few, but this one is like book 3 or 4 or something. I'm so sporadic with trying to get this book series finished, but this is Sugar Cookie Murder. And after like being like 2 years or so of just reading the new Hannah Swensens, not the original ones, I was honestly starting to wonder why I enjoyed them so much. And that sounds so mean, but I'm just being honest. And this book reminded me of the heart and the passion and why I love the Hannah Swensen mysteries so much. So it really was such a joy to go back and read these original books again that I feel like were in the prime of Joanne Fluke's writing career, and I read a bunch, so we're gonna talk about all of them. But out of all the ones that I read, I was so happy to read them again, and I think I only have like 2 more left, and I'm really sad because they're so good, and I just feel like the newer Hannah Swensens are just not gonna compare with how much I love these original books. So I'm taking my time, I'm savoring them, but they're so good that I fly through them whenever I read them. So this one took place through Christmas and I read it in May. So obviously I was not in the holiday spirit yet, but I still really enjoyed it because I love Christmas. And this one was a little bit different because the whole mystery took place in one evening, which was different than the usual setting where we're going through like weeks or months or whatever trying to catch the killer. So that was really cool. I liked the surprise with that one. Then next I read Peach Cobbler Murder. This one was really interesting because there was a big love triangle happening, and also there was some competition with a new bakery that opened right across the street from Hannah Swensen. And oh yeah, by the way, Hannah Swensen was a baker if you couldn't tell with the names of these books, but there was some competition and I really enjoyed this one as well. Okay, and then I read Cherry Cheesecake Murder, which in the future, one of the characters from this book comes back in a very big way. So it was really cool to see his origin story and see how that all began. I liked that this one, the setting was a movie set, which is really fun, but this one, the killer was really predictable. I don't usually guess the killers very easily, but this one was pretty obvious. And then lastly, the last Hannah Swensen book I read for the year was Key Lime Pie Murder. I wrote down that this is probably in my top 3 favorite Hannah Swensen books because it took place in a carnival. It was really dark. Like there were some scenes that like my heart was beating so fast. I also loved that we got to see the origin story for Cuddles, which is one of the cats that is in the books later on. So like I said, because I was reading the other ones first, it was nice to go back and like kind of see where some of these stories began. But I really enjoyed this one. And yeah, I think I only have a couple left. So stay tuned for next year to see if I finally finish the series. And then I did read a couple of books that were physical copies. I am trying to read more physical copies, but I got so engrossed in Amory Ames and Hannah Swenson that I just decided to keep buying more books on my iPad instead of getting through some of my books so I can get rid of some of them. But two of the books that I read this year were Tuck Everlasting, and this was a book I think I bought years and years and years ago after I watched the movie for the first time. If you haven't seen the movie, it has Alexis Bledel in it, and really good movie. Although I will say, after I watched this movie, after I read the book again, like to revisit it, the acting was so bad. I could not believe it. But it was interesting to read Tuck Everlasting because it is very different from the movie in terms of the number one thing is Winnie's age. So basically, to give you a synopsis, this book is about a girl who's very wealthy and lives on the edge of a forest that her family owns, and she finds out one day that there's a family living in the forest, and eventually it comes out that they are eternal because they drink from this water fountain. And she has a choice whether to drink from the fountain and live with them for the rest of her life or into eternity, or to die. And not right then, obviously, but like in the future. And it's very heartfelt. I really struggle with the concept of like eternity and death. So for me, I was surprised how well I handled this book, but I think it actually gave me some peace over that topic. So I really enjoyed it. I think it's a very heartfelt book. It's a super quick and easy read, and I just think that it is so good. I just realized I haven't said the names of any of these authors, but this is by Natalie Babbitt and the Amory Ames mysteries are by Ashley Weaver. My bad. I'm really struggling with getting back in the flow of these talking videos. But one of the biggest differences between the book and the movie is that in the book, Winnie is about 10 years old, and there's a little insinuation of romance between her and Jesse, which is a little bit creepy because he's like 17, but really he's like 100 and something, and she's 10. Hi, buddy. I'm just finishing my video real quick. So the romance in the movie was completely different from the book. There wasn't a lot of romance at all, but it was still a little creepy when Jesse asked her to marry him when she's literally 10 years old. But in the movie, it made a little more sense because she's like 14 or 15. He's like 17. But like I said, in the book, there's really no romance. And in the movie, there's a lot of romance. Like that's the main focus. So yeah, just some differences, but it's a really cute book and yeah, very deep concept. And then I also read The Bones of Paris. So this book I started reading for Halloween. It was supposed to be my murder mystery for Halloween, and I got so sidetracked. We went on vacation and to Tennessee, and I was planning to read the whole time, and I got very distracted of having fun, and so I just finished it yesterday. I didn't end up doing any Christmas reads or anything because this book was keeping my attention, and it definitely did take a little bit longer to read because it was a little more like advanced in the writing style than I'm used to, so a lot of like bigger words and stuff, which sounds so silly, but it really did like take a little more energy and focus to read it. But it was a very good book. It's a murder mystery that takes place in Paris. It had a lot of heart and emotion in it, and my biggest strife with this book is just I felt like there was a lot of like filler content that wasn't necessary. It was a lot longer than it needed to be, but it was really good. I really enjoyed seeing Paris in like the 1920s, late 1920s, and the killer, like the reason for the killing was very detailed, so that was really interesting to read as well. So anyway, yes, I highly recommend this book. This is by Lori R. King, and it says it's a book of suspense, but I didn't feel like nervous like really until the very end. Like I didn't have that like emotion. I've had a lot more emotion with like Hannah Swenson and Amory Ames mysteries, like in terms of like my heart racing, like I'm nervous to see what's gonna happen, but there was a little bit of suspense, so I'll give it credit for that. And lastly, I did read two more books that I don't have yet because I read my dad's first two books that he's written, and I don't think I can really say much about them, but one is going to be about his career as, not his career, but his profession as a bankruptcy lawyer, and he's going to be sharing some, you know, facts and insight into starting a bankruptcy case. And also there's going to be another book that is a very heartfelt and hard to read but important story about somebody from Miami, which I will share more when the book comes out. But I am part of my dad's editing team, so I read both of those books this year, and I'm sure I'm going to be reading them many more times before the book actually comes out. So as soon as it comes out, I will share share with you guys, but that was really cool to read a book that my dad wrote himself. So, well, 2 books that my dad wrote himself. Anyway, guys, that is every book I read in 2022. I hope that you enjoyed. I know I didn't really have a lot of variety there. It's a lot of murder mysteries, but what can I say? That's what I enjoy reading. I do have some fun book ideas that I want to read for this year, so I'm really excited to share those. But I hope you all are having a wonderful start to your new year. Let me know your favorite book you read in 2022 down below, and I'll see you all very soon with a new video. Bye, everybody.